The military was transporting a mysterious cargo when, due to a bumpy road, one of the containers fell off the truck without the driver noticing. One of these canisters even rolled right into a stinky sewer. A few days later, some kids playing hide and seek stumbled upon it near a sewer drain. Without thinking twice, they opened the valve and, to their horror, found a corpse inside. The kids freaked out and ran away, but Billy, the leader, couldn't shake his curiosity. He decided to go back with a friend to check it out, locking Johnny in a nearby crypt to keep him from interfering. Meanwhile, a group of grave robbers arrived at the cemetery, looking to make a quick score by looting valuables. Spotting them, Johnny saw his chance and slipped away. Back at the sewer, Billy smashed the glass covering the activation button on the canister, and as soon as he pressed it, a red alarm started blaring and thick green gas began pouring out. The smell was overpowering, and they bolted, unaware that the gas was releasing a deadly virus. The toxic gas drifted through the sewer pipes toward the nearby cemetery, just as heavy rain started pouring down. The rain mixed with the gas and seeped into the soil, stirring something deep underground. Back home, Johnny glanced out his window and caught sight of his two friends running away. Worried, he went to Billy's house, where he found Billy lying in bed, looking sick, no doubt infected from inhaling that gas earlier. To confirm if it was the canister that caused the problem, Johnny geared up and went back to the sewer alone. When he got there, the canister was already open, its contents nowhere to be found. That's when he noticed a phone number printed on the canister. Figuring this must connect to someone responsible, he jotted it down in his notebook. Just as he turned to leave, Johnny spotted something horrifying. A corpse, now alive and hideous, stumbling toward him. Terrified, Johnny bolted. He managed to shove the slow-moving zombie back down the sewer entrance before making a mad dash, running away as fast as he could. By the time Johnny reached the cemetery, he was out of breath, stopping for a moment to catch it. But just then, he noticed the ground beginning to crack open as something struggled to rise from beneath. A large hand slowly reached up through the dirt. Panicking, Johnny had no choice but to keep running, just as more corpses started clawing their way out of their graves. Meanwhile, two grave robbers, Joey and Ed, were still inside the mausoleum, completely unaware of the nightmare about to unfold around them. The toxic gas had seeped into the room, and the bodies in the coffins were beginning to move. Joey noticed first, calling out to Ed, who turned around just in time to see a corpse rising, almost choking on the apple he was eating. In all their years robbing graves, they'd never seen anything like this. Joey swung a metal rod at the zombie, but it did nothing. This thing just wouldn't stay down. Realizing they were in serious trouble, the two tried to flee, but as they reached the doorway, they found even more zombies outside, blocking every exit. In a split second, one of the zombies grabbed Ed's ankle, and Joey barely managed to kick it off in time. With nowhere else to go, they bolted toward an open path, only to find that zombies were now closing in from every direction. As Joey and Ed ran for their lives, they bumped into Brenda, who had come looking for them. Spotting her boyfriend Joey, Brenda immediately demanded, "What horrible thing did you two do in there?" Ed, feeling guilty, dropped to his knees, confessing and begging for forgiveness. But with zombies piling up around them, they had no choice but to keep running. Meanwhile, Johnny had made it home and tried telling his sister Lucy and her husband Jesse all about the zombies he'd seen. But no matter how he explained, they didn't believe a word. Worried Johnny might pull another stunt, Lucy locked him in his room, but Johnny wasn't giving up so easily. Determined to call the number on the strange container, he started a smoky little fire to set off the smoke alarm. When Lucy opened the door to check, Johnny seized the chance, darting out and into the next room to grab the phone and dial the number. Surprisingly, the call went through, and a military colonel answered. Just as Johnny began explaining, though, Brenda, Joey, and Ed came racing down the street, accidentally knocking over a utility box and killing the connection. Stepping out to check the damage, they were horrified to see that the streets were now crawling with zombies. As they scrambled through the neighborhood, Brenda, Joey, and Ed accidentally ended up at Johnny's house. Seeing unfamiliar faces burst in, Jesse immediately told them to get out. The three frantically explained there were zombies everywhere outside, while Johnny insisted they needed to call the police. Still, Lucy didn't believe a word of it, until Ed's bag started moving on its own. To everyone's horror, they realized Ed had accidentally brought along a zombie head. Panic set in, and even Lucy and Jesse could no longer deny the truth. Then, in a moment of chaos, the zombie head bit Ed's finger, causing him to yell in pain and shake it off. Thinking fast, Jesse grabbed a screwdriver from his belt and tried to drive it into the zombie head, but it just kept cursing back at him, completely unfazed. Out of options, Jesse finally tossed the head outside. Just as Johnny was about to make another call, a zombie from outside grabbed him by the head. Lucy and Jesse reacted quickly, cutting off a chunk of Johnny's hair to free him from the zombie's grasp. With the undead ready to break down the door, they rushed to barricade it with a heavy cabinet, but it wouldn't last long. The zombies would soon get in. Since their car was totaled, they realized their only chance was to head to the doctor's house next door and find another vehicle. Jesse stayed behind to cover the others' escape, keeping a close watch on the situation. But within seconds, the zombies came barreling through the door. As Jesse turned to leave, he came face to face with another zombie, which tackled him to the ground. In the scuffle, he accidentally pressed a stray remote, turning on the TV. Suddenly, both he and the zombie were captivated by a fitness instructor dancing on the screen. Apparently, even in their undead state, the zombies hadn't lost all of their instincts. One by one, other zombies stumbled toward the TV. Jesse seized the distraction to slip away. Meanwhile, Johnny, Lucy, and the others were trying to escape, but one particularly clever zombie had silently crept up behind them. Just in time, Jesse caught up and managed to pin the zombie to the wall, allowing the group to keep moving. They finally arrived at the doctor's house, explaining the situation urgently. The doctor, however, looked at them skeptically, completely unconvinced by their wild claims of zombies. Realizing time was running out, Jesse had no choice but to take a slightly more hands-on approach to convey the seriousness of their situation. As they entered the garage, the doctor finally grasped the gravity of the situation, seeing the street outside teeming with zombies. With the undead closing in, Jesse floored the gas pedal, bursting out of the garage and into the chaos. The streets were completely overrun, and to Johnny's horror, he spotted Billy among the zombies. The gas exposure had clearly led to his transformation too. Meanwhile, Ed and Joey were already showing disturbing symptoms from inhaling the toxic gas. Ed opened a window to catch some air, but out of nowhere, a zombie lunged from the rooftop, grabbing onto him. Ed quickly rolled up the window, and Jesse slammed the brakes, throwing the zombie off the car. Unfortunately, its severed hand remained gripping Ed's neck, terrifying everyone in the car. The doctor, seemingly calm, had his moment of shock when the hand lunged toward his lap. Lucy immediately yanked it off and tossed it out the window. The dismembered hand even waved goodbye in a twisted farewell as it was flung into the street. With Ed and Joey's conditions worsening, they decided the only option was to get them to the hospital. But upon arrival, the place was eerily empty. Luckily, with a doctor among them, he suited up and began checking on Ed and Joey. Jesse took Johnny and Lucy outside to look for further help, but they soon found that the police station was deserted as well. Just then, Lucy spotted a horde of zombies approaching the car and shouted a warning, inadvertently drawing the undead's attention. The trio quickly scrambled back into the car, narrowly escaping as the zombies closed in. Instead of returning straight to the hospital, they made a detour to Johnny's grandfather's house. But the house was eerily quiet, with no sign of Grandpa. Likely a bad omen. Fortunately, his guns were still there. Armed with fresh weapons, they headed back to the hospital. At the hospital, Jesse urged everyone to leave, but the doctor warned that Ed and Joey's condition was grave. Their pupils were unresponsive, and corpse-like spots had appeared on their skin. Technically, they were already dead, but hadn't fully turned yet. They were clearly mutating. As they discussed what to do, Johnny slipped away and headed to the PA room, where he spoke into the microphone, only to unintentionally draw in a zombie. The creature shattered the glass and lunged at him, and Johnny fired back before making a run for the elevator. Hearing the gunshots, Jesse and Lucy rushed over. Lucy managed to slice the zombie in half, but even that didn't stop it. The upper half continued clawing toward Johnny. In a panic, Johnny turned on a steam valve, and the burst of hot vapor finally held the zombie back. The trio seized the moment, darting into the elevator and narrowly escaping. Meanwhile, in the hospital room, Ed overheard the doctor planning to abandon him and Joey. Furious, he knocked the doctor out with a single blow. By the time Jesse and the others reached the room, Ed, Joey, and Brenda had already taken off in a car. While on the run, they came across a group of soldiers who, fearing the spread of the infection, refused to help. In the chaos, everyone forgot that Ed had already turned. One soldier, caught off guard, was bitten by Ed, and the others immediately opened fire. But their bullets had no effect on him. With the situation spiraling out of control, the soldiers had no choice but to scatter. Brenda, desperate, tried to flee with Joey, but he soon began to mutate as well, leaving her nowhere to escape. Tragically, she became zombie food. Meanwhile, Jesse's group was driving away in an ambulance when they accidentally struck a zombie. In the process, they stumbled upon a crucial discovery. An electric shock could actually kill the zombies for good. But as they were about to leave town, they realized the entire area had been sealed off by the military. Thinking they were finally safe, they were instead forced back by armed soldiers who made it clear that no one could cross the quarantine line. With no other option, they set off toward the slaughterhouse. Knowing the zombies' weakness, they decided to use pig brains to lure them in. While waiting, Johnny heard the sound of a car and, thinking it might be survivors, ran off to investigate, only to discover it was actually a group of zombies driving around in a car. Luckily, he quickly turned back and made it to safety. Once everything was set, they drove through the streets, tossing pig brains onto the road to attract the horde. The zombies followed the bait all the way to the power station, where they managed to lure them behind a metal gate. The doctor waited in the control room, ready to flip the switch, while the other three set up traps outside. Just as it seemed the plan was working, the small zombie Billy managed to climb over the fence and open the gate, letting the entire horde flood in. With zombies closing in fast, the three took refuge in a nearby truck. But in their panic, they'd left the walkie-talkie outside, leaving the doctor unaware of when to pull the lever. Then, Jesse noticed a small window between the cab and the cargo hold of the truck. Thinking fast, he told Johnny to climb through and get into the driver's seat. Under Jesse's guidance, Johnny managed to start the truck and plowed it straight into the control room. Johnny dashed to the control panel and threw the switch. A powerful electric surge flowed through the setup, and the zombies instantly began convulsing in a wild, chaotic electro-dance caught in the deadly current. Just when they thought it was all over, Zombie Billy, who had somehow avoided the shock, suddenly tackled Johnny. In a crucial moment, the doctor arrived just in time. While Billy was distracted, Johnny kicked him away and used the high-voltage electricity behind him to finally take down the zombie. After a long session of electric therapy, the remaining zombies outside began to drop like flies. Meanwhile, the military forces arrived on the scene to start clearing the fallen corpses. A few survivors casually walked away, ready to embrace a new, unashamed life.